Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Sasquatch Theory. In this interview, we have Colton, and he had a Bigfoot encounter in Cleveland, Tennessee, while fishing in a creek. This region of the United States is the southern part of the Appalachian Mountains. If you guys enjoy Class A eye-sighting encounters, then this is the episode for you, and it's one of the best interviews I have ever done. Colton does an excellent job at describing his encounter, and you can tell he's being very genuine about what he witnessed. If you ever lay eyes on a Bigfoot creature, it will certainly change you, and you will never see life the same way again. When I had my Bigfoot encounters, it's almost like my brain was reformatted, and you will begin to see the truth in everything. You will also question everything you have ever learned about the world and our existence. I think it's important for people to know if you ever encounter a Bigfoot not to pursue the creature, and to know that there are many other people out there just like you who have encountered the same thing. A large majority of the population has never encountered or experienced anything out of the ordinary in their life, and some of those people will do everything in their power to belittle you and make fun of you every chance they get. It is important to always remember that you know what you saw, and that is the only thing that matters. If you guys can, please be sure to listen to this entire interview, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if possible. Once again, there are many people telling me that they have been unsubscribed from the channel, they are unable to like my videos, and their comments are being deleted. If you guys can, reach out to YouTube and let them know how you feel about this. Good luck, because it's like talking to a robot from outer space sometimes. If you have a Bigfoot encounter that you would like to share with me here on the channel, please contact me sometime at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Alright guys, with all that being said, let's dive into our next Bigfoot interview from the state of Tennessee here on Sasquatch Theory. All right, Colton, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for asking. Colton, if you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
Yeah, man. My name is Colton. I'm from a place called Cleveland, Tennessee. It's about, I guess, 20 miles north of Chattanooga, about 60 miles south of Knoxville. It's just in the southern Appalachian Mountains. I've been here my whole life. I grew up hunting and fishing in these woods. I've seen pretty much every, known wildlife around. Um, I did a lot of hunting in my younger years before this experience, but mostly I do a lot of fly fishing. I'm chasing trout constantly and doing all that. But my experience did not happen in a remote area in the mountains or anything like that. It actually happened in the back of the neighborhood that I grew up in. And I should probably lay out the way the neighborhood was set up. Just a residential neighborhood, and our house happened to be the very last one in the cul-de-sac. And it was the only house that backed up to this huge forest behind. I mean, no other neighborhoods were back there. I think that there was like an abandoned farm somewhere back in that direction, but I'd never been to it or I'd never seen it. And about 20 yards into the tree line of this forest, or into the forest, there was this creek called Mouse Creek. And anybody that from Cleveland, Tennessee, will know what I'm talking about. Mouse Creek runs through the whole town. And we moved in this house probably when I was like eight or nine. And like I said, I love fishing. So I was in heaven once I found out that we had a creek there, and I would go explore it all the time, fish it. There was some deep pools and stuff. There was actually some nice bass and, catfish even. I mean, it was kind of crazy because you wouldn't think that they could, live in this creek. It was pretty small. And so I fished this creek for years. I mean, almost on a daily basis. And this one particular day, the day that my encounter happened, I got home from school, just like any other day. I didn't even go inside. I just set my backpack down, got my fishing stuff, got my little tackle box ready and everything. And I should say I was 13 at the time, so I was pretty young. And so I get my stuff and I take off to my fishing spot. And the way that the backyard was, it kind of sloped down and like flattened off. And there was a wooden fence that was maybe 30 feet from the tree line. And to get to my fishing spot, I would cross this fence and then take off to the right, maybe 300 yards or whatever. And I'd cut a little path through the brush to get to this hole. And so I take off and I put my fishing stuff through the fence or whatever. And I climb the fence and I jump on the other side. And as soon as my feet hit the other side, there is an extreme commotion to my left, about 100 yards. And it's about 100 yards to the left and maybe 20 yards into the tree line. I hear movement and something running. And my first thought was that it was a white-tailed deer. I mean, there's whitetail everywhere around here. And it's moving quick, I mean, fast, right in my direction. Like I said, 20 yards in the tree line, it's almost paralleling the path that I was going to walk. But at the time, I'm stopped and I'm looking. But as I'm looking, and it all happened very fast, you know. As I'm looking, this thing is moving through the woods or through the brush, and I'm seeing trees just sway and shake. I mean, big trees, probably 6 or 7 inches in diameter. And just shortly after I noticed the tree sway, I noticed one just snaps, just crack, like so loud. And I'm like, what the hell is that? You know, and I'm standing still and it's like I said, running in my direction. And as it gets right in front of my eye line of sight, all the commotion stops dead. It's silent. And that's when kind of my curiosity turned to like concern or even fear because it at that moment I thought it knows that I'm here. Whatever this is knows that I'm here. So I'm just watching and I can see brush barely moving. I don't hear any footsteps. I don't hear anything else, but I can just see the brush barely moving. That's whatever it is creeping towards the edge of the tree line. And I see this dark silhouette and it's like in a stalking position. At first I didn't know what it was, but as it gets closer to me, I can see that it's on 2 feet. And the first thing that I see is its right arm and its hand. And its hand has a thumb on it. I mean, as clear as day, there's no question at all. It had a thumb on it. And it's coming to the edge. And there's a weird thing that happens when you see something that's completely out of your paradigm of reality. It's like your brain is constantly trying to recalibrate and try to figure out what you're seeing, and you can't put it in a box because I mean, right off the bat, I knew that it wasn't a bear. It was on 2 legs and had a hand that was similar to ours, but at this time that I still couldn't really make out a lot of detail. And it comes to the edge of the tree line and it stands fully erect at that point. And dude, I cannot even convey the level of fear that I felt when it stood up and I saw its face. Like it's a type of fear that I hadn't felt before or since. I mean, the only time in my life it's like the most primal fear that you can imagine. And and like I said, I'm sitting here looking at this thing, and that's the fear just keeps building as my brain is recalibrating and trying to understand what I'm seeing. And at the time, like I said, I was 13. I probably had heard the term Bigfoot, but that's about as far as it went. You know, I didn't really know the stories. I'd never seen any footage or anything like that. I'm thinking that I'm looking at like a monster or half man, half monster. And I went back later and measured the distance roughly of how far away I was from it, and it was about 26 to 30 feet. So I'm extremely close. I mean, I could see the details of its face, like weathered lines on its forehead and everything. And what I was looking at had reddish brown hair. It wasn't extremely long or shaggy like in the Gimlin footage. It was maybe 2 or 3 inches long. Um, it had lighter hair at the top of its forehead, its chin, and its chest. It had almost like a tannish colored hair, and it had less hair on its chest. And its face didn't have a lot of hair either, to be honest. And that's what probably made me think immediately that it was a man, you know. And I think I told you in the email, I have a degree in biology. And it doesn't make this account any more or less credible compared to anybody else. But in my later years, I probably studied primates more than the average person. And what I was looking at looked more human than it did like a gorilla or a chimpanzee or anything else. It had that heavy brow ridge like a Neanderthal, but it didn't have like a distended mouth like a gorilla or chimp, like where their mouth extends further than their forehead. It had a flat face, and I thought I was looking at some type of man, but it was the biggest man that I'd ever seen, ever, and to this day. And the height isn't really what stood out to me. I would say that it was probably between 7 and 8 feet high. But when you're 13, everything's bigger than you are. So it was hard to tell. But what stood out to me was the mass. I mean, this thing was bigger than the biggest animal or human that I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, its shoulders looked like bowling balls. Its chest, you could almost see like the striations and the muscles of the chest. It was just so massive. And as I'm seeing all this, I'm coming to understand that like I have no defense. Like there is nothing that I can do if this thing wants to attack me. I mean, I have a fishing rod, and I mean, I don't even know if I had a hand grenade that it would do anything. I mean, this thing was massive, and I'm so close to it, and I cannot look away from its face and its eyes, and its face is completely expressionless. It didn't look curious. It didn't look like it didn't know what I was. It looked like it knew exactly what I was, and it was sitting there thinking about what to do, just like I was. Um, and I can't move. It's the only time in my life that I was frozen in fear. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't blink. I couldn't look away. And it didn't make any vocalizations. I didn't hear any, or I didn't smell any of the smells people talk about. And I'm still not sure what finally clicked in my mind for me to run, but something did. And eventually, probably, I mean, it all happened, like I said, so fast, maybe 6 or 7 seconds. It finally clicks in my mind to run. And I drop my fishing rod on my tackle box and I turn around and I'm running for my life. And I don't know if you or anybody listening has ever ran for their life, but it's a different kind of run. I mean, it really is like it's a primal type thing. And I had to cross that fence again, was the longest 3 seconds of my life, because I'm thinking the entire time that I'm running that I'm just waiting on it to grab me, just snatch me up. And I cross the fence and I run back up the hill to the house. And it was a unusual day in that my mom had picked me up from school. She was usually working, but that particular day she picked me up, and I ran into the house as fast as I could, screaming. She said, I didn't remember this until later when she told me, but I was screaming. She said I was as white as a ghost, and told her that I had seen a monster out there. or yeah, or I forget the exact terminology that I said or that she said I used, but I immediately got her and tried to bring her back out to see what I had seen. And obviously at that point it was gone. But she never doubted me. I have a lot of sympathy for people that see these things and they're ridiculed or made fun of. Um, I don't think that that's a reflection on them. It's the reflection on the people hearing the story, because a lot of people, they they don't want to believe that this is real because it's completely outside of their reality. And if this is real, what else is real? UFOs or whatever. It's hard for people to believe. But my family never doubted me. And I've only told this story maybe 10 times in my life, and the people that I've told it to are people that I consider, as close to me as anybody, and I trust them and they trust me. So maybe that's why they haven't ridiculed me. But even then, they really don't know what to say. That they've never seen anything like it, and they don't know. It honestly scares them that something like this could be out there. But my dad got home later that day, and we went back out to where this had happened, which is crazy because I was still terrified. But I went back out there, and it looked like a tornado had came through the brush of the path that this thing ran towards me. I mean, it was insane. There was like 3 or 4, 6 or 7 inch trees just snapped in half. You could just see a clear path, and he never saw it clearly, but he saw that something massive was down here. And he believed me. I mean, maybe he thought it was a bear or something like that, but dude, I'm telling you, there is no doubt in my mind that it wasn't a bear. We don't have brown bears in the Appalachian Mountains. And this thing was 100% like a cinnamon color, and it was on 2 legs, and it had opposable thumbs. There is no way that it was a bear. And so probably a week goes by, and I'm scared, or curious. It's all these different emotions. And believe it or not, like a week later, I decide that I want to go fish again, which I don't know if that, shows how crazy I am or how much I love fishing. But I went back, I went back down there and didn't see anything. Nothing happened as I'm walking to my fishing spot, and I get down to the pool that I was fishing, and I've been there maybe 20 or 30 minutes, and it sounds like somebody taking like a Louisville Slugger and just splintering it against a tree. I mean, like, people say tree knocks, but that doesn't really like justify what you're hearing when it's up close. I mean, it sounded like a gun going off right across the creek. It was so loud that I hit the deck almost. I literally thought it was a gun. But I looked up, and I couldn't see anything at all, nothing. But honestly, that was my cue that I got to get out of here. Like, I don't know what I'm dealing with, or I don't know what's out here, what doesn't want me to be fishing in this creek, but I'm done. I tap out. So I'll leave. And it just so happened that at the time, my parents were building a new house, and we moved maybe 2 months later. But from that day, I never went back down there. I never fished. I never crossed that fence again. And to this day, I know what I saw with my own eyes, but I don't necessarily know how to put it into a box. Obviously, it's what people consider Sasquatch, but it was more human than primate. I mean, in my particular situation, maybe it was because it didn't have a lot of hair on its face. I don't know. But this thing looked human. And when I looked into its eyes, it seemed intelligent. And I know that that's kind of like projecting human emotions on an animal per se. But if there is any animal walking the earth that justifies like comparing to us or anthropomorphizing, it's this thing because it's closer to us visually than a chimpanzee or a gorilla or any other great primate. And dude, I've thought about this experience for 20 years, and it happened when I was 13, and I'm 30 now. And I haven't came to any, any closer to understanding what I saw. And there's not a single day that goes by that I go into the woods and I don't think about this. You know, it it absolutely terrified me. But at the same time, this might just be how I am. I'm so curious to know what it is that I still go into the woods. I usually don't go alone or into deep remote places or anything like that. But I want to know so bad what I saw and what is going on with this phenomenon that I still go into the woods and I'm still expecting to see it again, even though in the back of my mind, I don't want to at all. I would still be open to like having another experience just from a distance, not from like 25 feet away. Um, and yeah, man, that's my experience. I don't really know if I have any definitive answers, even though I was so close to it and stuff. But I mean, it changed my life for sure as far as how I approach what's real and what's at the edge of our understanding. Because I understand people see things, you know, it, it, when you're getting like a degree in science, they're all about repeatability and falsifiable data or hypotheses and stuff like that. But honestly, some of the most interesting experiences in life are not repeatable. And, that doesn't make them any less real. It just means that there's a lot more left for us to understand. And, you know, I still think about it to this day. So, yeah, that's my experience.
All right, Colton, thank you very much for sharing your encounter with me. If you
Yeah.
would, let's break down what this creature looked like. I know you already explained a lot of the features, but what
Yeah.
shape was the head?
The head, I've heard a lot of people say it's a conical shape from what I was looking at, and maybe because it was straight on, face to face, it seemed rounded to me. And it might have even been shaded because of the brush. I couldn't get a definitive like shadow line or anything like that, but it seemed rounded to me.
Okay. And about how tall was the creature?
I would say between 7 and 8 feet tall. I've heard stories like the Fred Roll guy in Alaska. He said, like 13 feet. I've heard people say like 12 and 13 feet. It wasn't that high, but it wasn't that tall. But it was the biggest man that I'd ever seen. And the bamboo at the edge of this forest, I forgot to mention that whoever previously owned the house or whatever decided to plant like bamboo or whatever, and it was completely invasive. I mean, it was everywhere. So when I was looking at this thing, it was standing in like a bamboo stalk, and its head was at the very top of this bamboo stalk. And I would say that it was, I mean, probably 7 or 8 feet tall, at at least.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like
Yeah.
we had spoken before, and I told you I'm in South Carolina, and there's a bunch of patches of bamboo in areas where I'm finding tree structures, and it seems like people are planting this stuff, and I often wonder if the Sasquatch like the bamboo.
Yeah, I would say that I mean, if they clearly they make structures, it's probably much easier to manipulate and, make into a structure than, a small oak tree or oak sapling or anything like that. I
Yeah.
wish that I could go back and,
Mm.
like I said at the time, I didn't have I had no knowledge of Bigfoot or their behavior. And I wish I could go back and like look for structures or anything like that to indicate, that they were in that area. I mean, clearly they were in that area, but I had never seen anything else besides just that crazy experience, just face to face and that tree knock. But even at the time that the tree knock happened, I didn't necessarily associate it with what I had seen a week before. It just scared me to death. And then later on, when my curiosity led me down the path to kind of study about these things, that I realized that that's something that they do. And I put it together as it did not want me in that area. I guess, I don't know if it wanted the fish in that creek. I don't know what it wanted, but it did not like me in that area.
Yeah, it sounds like it was being very territorial. And
Yeah, absolutely.
this creature was 8 foot tall. It had a round head. What color
Yeah.
and what shape were the eyeballs?
Like the heavy brow ridge that I talked about, it had deep set eyes, and the eyes were dark for sure. I couldn't, to be honest with you, I didn't see any. How our eyes have white sclera is what it's called. We have the iris, which is usually blue or brown or green, and then the white part of our eyes, which is called the sclera. I could not see the sclera. It might have been there on the edge, but all I saw was dark, just as dark as they could come eyes,
Okay,
just
so
staring
they were
right back at
black.
me. Yeah, yeah. I mean, they may have been brown. It was a clear day. It was not a cloud in the sky, but the way that it was standing, the the brow ridge, because it was so heavy, cast a shadow over its eyes. So it was hard for me to necessarily, they could have been brown or black.
Yeah. And what type of expression did this creature have?
Absolutely expressionless.
Okay.
But at the same time, and this may just be me in the moment, like I said earlier, projecting my own emotion. When I looked into its eyes, it had what I feel like was intelligence. Like it knew exactly what I was. And it didn't look curious. It didn't have like his eyebrows raised. It didn't look any type of fear of like, what is this? I need to get away. It just stood there, it just fully erect, just staring at me, just like it understood what I was, and maybe that it didn't need to, come out of the woods or anything. I look back and I think maybe that it thought I was some type of animal when it initially ran my direction, that it could, kill or hunt. Yeah, I really don't know, because once it identified me, it could clearly see that I was extremely vulnerable. And if it wanted to kill me or take me, like some missing 411 case, it would have had two strides and nobody would have ever seen me again or known anything more about it. But it just stood there and just looked at me. You know, it was the craziest thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And the expression on its face, like, would it be kind of like a frog or a fish? Like, no smile, no nothing,
No
just like the
smile
same
or
look.
anything. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No smile or anything. But I mean, a lot of times humans, like, we say a lot with our eyes. There's a lot of nonverbal communication. Most of it is actually nonverbal, and it's hard to put into words, but like when you can read people's eyes, and they say a lot with their eyes. And this thing in my mind was saying a lot, like whether that's just pure like disdain for humans. I mean, it just looked at me like, I know what you are, and you need to stay out of here. Now, that's just me saying that. Who knows what it was thinking? But it just had like a kind of like, I don't know, like a really pensive look in its eyes, like it was like thinking about what to do, kind of, but not concerned either way. I know that that sounds ridiculous, but it's hard to put into words what I was feeling about the way that it was looking at me.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I've encountered these things several times, and the look that they have on their face is dead serious, like they mean
Yeah,
business.
absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably what I mean, like I said, every time my brain was trying to recalibrate what I was seeing, the fear level was just rising and rising. Like I'm in dire circumstances. Like this is, I mean, this is where I die right now
Yeah.
because it could have done whatever it wanted to me, and nobody would have known, or there would be nothing that I could do.
Yeah, it's like running into a grizzly bear. We don't have them around
Yeah,
here, but you think about that when you see them on TV and hear stories of other people running into grizzlies. It's like, what if that ever happened to me? When you run into a
yeah,
Sasquatch, you're put into that exact same situation, but it's 10
right.
times worse because this is something that shouldn't exist. And
Exactly.
yeah, when
Yeah,
you're
that's exactly right.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you're in that moment, it's that unpredictable feeling of what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. If you see a bear in the wild, you have been conditioned your whole life to understand what a bear is, what it does, anything like that, its behavior. And you kind of have, a starting point. But when you see these things, you have no clue. You don't know anything about them. You don't even know what you're looking at. I mean, it really is. I can't overstate, like, you know, people know Sasquatch, they've been told Sasquatch, but when you're in the woods and you see it, it you can't believe what you're looking at. Like it's so crazy that this thing could exist and that you're standing here looking at it and you don't know anything about it. Yet it has this intelligence to it, and they're so similar to us, but yet so different. It's a wild experience, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we are hardwired within our DNA to know, oh, that's a snake, that's bad. I'm going to get away
Yeah,
from it. Or, that's a bear. I'm going to go the other way or stand my ground, whatever it is you do with the bear. But when you see a Sasquatch, your brain, your DNA does not know what to do. It's not
yes.
something that exists in your DNA code, and you just kind
Right.
of freeze. Your mind goes blank. There's nowhere to categorize the the encounter. So it's
Yeah.
frightening.
You couldn't have said it any better, man. And also through that, there's this strange familiarity. Like you think that you're looking at something like similar to you in I don't know how to describe it, man. Like I told you, what I was looking at seemed much more human than it did primate. And that just racked my brain. It's unbelievable. It really is.
Yeah, that's frightening, man. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry that happened to you. I know,
Yeah, yeah,
like you said earlier, it's something you think about every day, and it probably infests your thoughts, and it's just something that's never going to go away. I'm sure
no,
as you're doing your daily activities, like the memory of that creature pops into your brain just randomly, and you're trying to think of the facial features and what it did constantly.
yeah, absolutely. I could live 1,000 years and I would never forget that experience. But the frustrating part is that I may never get any answers, But I'm thankful for people like you and people that, put, y- you know, heavy research and diligent research into this subject. But at the same time, like you have to come to terms with like this thing. I, and another aspect of this I've heard people talk about is its association with orbs and UFOs and stuff like that. And I don't know what to make of all that, but I can tell you that it almost has a supernatural ability to remain elusive, and it almost doesn't make sense. Like it, we have supposedly never found any bodies or anything like that. And the only explanation that I can come with that is that they bury their dead. And if that's not the explanation, then it has to be some type of, you know, supernatural. I don't know. I really don't know what to make of it. But the point is that it brings you to terms with that you may never have a definitive answer of what you experienced or what this thing is or what its place is in comparison to us, you know. Um, I've thought about it, and if these creatures were on a similar time of evolution as us, they would have had to evolve somewhere else besides the African savannah. If you believe that that's where, you know, Homo sapiens rose up, you know, because if they would have evolved there, they are such an apex predator. I don't understand how that we could have outcompeted them. You know, like if you talk to any evolutionary biologist, they'll say that our predatory eyesight, our opposable thumbs, which translates to being able to manipulate our environment, and our language is what propelled us to the top of the food chain. But from what I can understand, these creatures have all three of those, and their language might not be as sophisticated. And clearly, we have a higher population than them. But I mean, if it was just head to head in the same environment, they would be able to outcompete us, especially if this was before we had the control of fire, access to tools or weapons. So, I mean, it just racks my brain, man. I really don't have any answers as to what these things are, how they fit in with our history. You know, it's so interesting. And yeah, it's so interesting, yet it concerns me. I don't know, man. It's wild.
Yeah, I understand. And could be a possibility that a lot of the ancient primate skulls that they find that they categorize to, 100,000 years ago or however long, Gigantopithecus, those could be Bigfoot skeletons and they're just labeling them as something else to go along
Yeah,
with the narrative or with what makes
absolutely,
sense.
dude. Yeah, I've looked at, you know, pictures of Gigantopithecus, and obviously that is a recreation. We don't have a picture of how it actually was. So that could have been it. But the recreations of what they believe Gigantopithecus was not what I saw. It looked more like an ape or a orangutan or something like that. Whereas this thing had a face that was so similar to ours, man. And I didn't see any teeth. You know, a lot of you can tell a lot by the dentition or the teeth between monkeys, apes, and humans and the shape of our jaw. Obviously, I couldn't identify any of that in the moment, and I didn't see any teeth. But I would be so curious to see how similar their teeth are to us, and their jaw shape and all that. You know, I mean, they're clearly a predator, and those people that think that they're completely docile or they're going to go out and have a spiritual awakening with Bigfoot are probably going to get their arms ripped off and beat to death. Like, I mean, these things are not, you have to take extreme caution in approaching them, because if they decide that they don't want you there, there's nothing that you can do. I mean, there's really nothing that you can do. You would have to have a huge caliber of firearm to stop this thing. I mean, if you just had like God forbid, a 22 or a 9 mm, I'm not sure that it would do anything other than make it mad.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
how thick and dense the muscles are on this thing.
Hmm.
And I cannot reiterate how quick that it moved through the woods. I mean, it was like a white-tailed deer at full speed, just plowing down whatever was in its way. I mean, it was insane, man. It was crazy.
Yeah. And if you shot one, you'd have to worry about the rest of the clan coming at you.
Absolutely. From what I can tell, they live, there's a family structure to this, and maybe that's why they become territorial. because they've interacted with humans for so long. They know our behavior, and they know that some of us would um hunt them, or like take them out if we had the opportunity. And maybe they're just protecting their family, or their clan, which is understandable for sure. um
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And with Gigantopithecus, all we have is like a jawbone and a tooth. If it was so large, shouldn't we have more bones? Where are the bones to these creatures if they existed? And it shows how quickly things will disappear. People go missing all the time in the woods, and we never find their bodies. And it's like, if you don't find it within a couple months, maybe a year or two, everything's gone.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, then they divert your attention away to something else. I mean, I I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but I mean, I have to believe that there are people, or a faction of people, that understand what these are, and they have a better grasp on the situation that we do. And maybe, I mean, like, our protected forest or national parks, or whatever, are a sanctuary for these things. But it's amazing how these missing person cases are swept under the rug, or it have some simple explanation, when in fact that it could be much more complicated than that. And what if there are bones out there of these creatures that are like confiscated, um or there's like people out there that are making sure, or at least trying their best to make sure, that the knowledge of these creatures doesn't get out to the wide public, because there's some aspect of it that they want to hide, whether that's a supernatural aspect, or the you know understanding that these things are much more closer to human than they are of an animal, and that people would have, some they would feel some type of way about a human or a hominid living out there in the woods that is so similar to us, but yet so different. I I, I don't know what to make of it, man. I wish I had more answers.
Yeah, I do too. And it would be nice to finally know the truth. And I think there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. They're hiding this because they don't want us to know what they truly are, and not just
Yeah,
because of the logging industry. I'm sure there's many factors, but I think a lot of it would change history and how we understand the world today.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I've heard the logging industry aspect, and I mean, if you just look at how humans behave in other industries, that makes sense. That the capitalism, the greed, that would contribute to maybe this issue. But I think it's much more than that. Much more than that. And um, yeah, and hope in this new age of information and our connectivity with the internet and stuff, there's a lot of there's a lot of negative stuff with the internet, social media, and we're not necessarily designed to take in the opinions of millions of people, but at the same time, we have an ability to exchange information and stories and experiences in a way that we never have. And if there is a group of people that are trying to hide the truth of this issue, then they're having a much tougher time, because people are so much the exchange of information is so much easier now, and the truth is much harder to hide. The same with the UFO situation. It's hard to hide when people can. It's no longer written newspapers, or just the mainstream media organizations sharing your beliefs about the world like it was in the 20th century.
Yeah, absolutely. If they're able to hide things about politics, things that are going on right in front of our faces, they can definitely hide something that's hidden out in the woods that doesn't want to be found. And
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just a continue, like a cycle that never ends. But
Exactly, man.
what are your
Exactly.
thoughts about when you went out into the woods, you crossed the fence, and you had your fishing pole and gear? Do you think this thing was out there fishing and possibly it became territorial? It knew what you were doing. You were in its fishing hole.
Yeah, I've thought about that before, and in my mind, I have to believe that it had seen me previous to this day because, like I said, man, I I went out here almost every afternoon. I mean, it was crazy how this was just my thing, and I'm almost positive that it would have observed me before fishing. However, I never took any fish out of the creek. It would have been one thing if I would have gone there every day and like had a stringer and I was catching fish and bringing them back to cook. I never did any of that. But I mean, that's the only conclusion that I can come to, unless it was just in the area and it was on the trail of some other, deer or whatever, and it hurt me. But the way the way that it looked at me, man, it's like it understood what I was doing and it understood what a fishing rod is. And I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but I'm sure that it had observed me doing what I was about to do many previous times, and maybe that day that it just didn't want me there.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And do you think this thing would have came at you if you would have stayed in the area, if you would have held your ground?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. The way that so I think I explained this. So I would go down and cross the fence, and then my favorite fishing spot, the one that I cut out a trail to get to, was about 300 to 400 yards to the right. And when this Bigfoot came at me, it came from the left, but it came almost, it didn't come directly in front of me. My sight, it came to where I was going to be going down that path, like it was cutting me off almost. So, I mean, it very well could have been, trying to cut me off. But I don't think anything good would have came if I would have stood my ground, and especially if I would have taken a step forward or anything like that. There's a bunch of like gorillas, for instance. You're not supposed to look at them in the eye. That's well known. But in this situation, I could not look away from the eye. But I don't know if it took that as like a challenge or anything like that, like eye contact. I don't know how they handle eye contact, but I mean, I really think a lot about like how quickly I could have became like a missing 411 case. And nobody would have ever known anything. It would have just appeared as if I went to the creek one day to fish and I never came back, and nobody around there had probably ever seen any sign or any indication of Sasquatch or anything like that. They would have never known anything. They wouldn't have found remains if this thing carried me off. Like if it was a bear, it would have started probably eating me right there or, whatever. And there would be remains, and in every other animal encounter, there's almost always remains or some kind of indication that it had carried me away or drug me away or whatever. But if this thing could have just snatched me up and took off, and all that would have been left is my fishing rod, and nobody would have ever had answers ever. So it it was all up to the creature that day. I mean, really, like it was sitting there, and maybe in its mind, it was thinking like, what do I do about this? Like this is an easy meal, but I'm in the open. Like if I grab him, I'm in sight of multiple houses and maybe people. I really don't know. Or maybe that it looks at us in the same kind of familiarity and wonders what we are exactly, just some hairless, smaller version of itself. And what is this thing, or what do I do with this? Or I don't know, man. I really don't.
Do you feel like he was sizing you up and kind of analyzing you to see what you were going to do?
Man, I felt like when he looked at me, he knew he had sized me up immediately. It looked like he was not not wondering about what I was going to do, but it was deciding what it should do. It sounds crazy, but like there was no, yeah, I don't know. It didn't, like I said, it didn't look surprised, like a kind of like a moment of like surprise where it's like wondering, okay, do I attack this or whatever. It just wandered up to the woods or stalked up to the woods, looked at me, knew exactly what I was, and you know, was sitting there deciding like, do I really want to do this, or like what should I do? You know, it had an expressionless face. You know, it didn't bare its teeth like in a predatory manner or anything like that. You know, it just looked at me like it in a full understanding. Like, if I want you, I can have you, and you need to stay right where you're at. And that might just be me in my head, but you know, there was some kind of mutual understanding that I needed to go now, and I ran for my life.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And you said this
Yeah.
was next to Chattanooga or the Chattanooga National Forest?
Yeah, it's about, so Cleveland, Tennessee is about 20 miles north of Chattanooga, maybe 60 miles south of Knoxville. It's real close to Western North Carolina and the Cherokee National Forest. The creek that this happened at is called Mouse Creek, and like I said, anybody in the Cleveland, Tennessee area will know exactly where the creek is. It runs through the entire town. It just so happens that at the point that it ran through behind my house was more remote. And I was the only house in the neighborhood that backed up to this wood line or in forest to where the creek, you had access to the creek. So, yeah, just in the southern Appalachian Mountains towards, southeastern Tennessee, western North Carolina.
Mhm. Yeah, the Appalachian Mountains, that's a huge mountain range.
Yeah, it is, man. It's one of the oldest, I'm pretty sure, in North America, as far as I can understand.
Yeah. And what time of year was this? What time of day?
This this was in March of 2006 at about 3 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon, because that's usually when I got home from school. And we moved into my new house in May of 2006, because I remember this because my birthday's in May. So so it was roughly 2 months before um, we moved into the new house in the spring for sure.
Was it a nice day? Was it cloudy? Do you remember that?
Absolutely not. It was completely clear. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was completely clear. And like I said, the sun, I picked up on the heavy brow ridge and deep set eyes because the way the sun was, it cast a shadow over its face, over its eyes. But the same shadow, it was not, it looked like it was a flat face based on the shadows. Like its mouth did not extend further, which, if the sun's high in the sky and its upper lip extended out quite a bit, it might cast a shadow on its lower, chin, jawline, and the sunlight was even across all of that, and it did not have a lot of hair on its face, and maybe that's why identified it so much as human. It had obviously hair all over its body, hair on the top of its head, but like where its mustache and lower, where a beard would be, it was thinner than I would expect it. It did not look anything like the Gimlin Patterson footage at all. It didn't. Um, the skin color under its fur was slightly darker than the reddish brown. It was almost like a ashy type gray, I guess you would say. You could see its lips. I mean, it had a flat nose that looked more like someone from African descent, like a big wide nose. Um, it had ears, from what I could say. I mean, the hair kind of obscured the complete shape of the ears, but it clearly had ears. Um, and what looked like a rounded head. I don't know if they have variability in like a conical head compared to a rounded head, but from what I could tell, this thing had a rounded head.
So it did have ears,
Yeah, yeah.
like a human?
Yeah. It was straight on. I could see like an extension out from the side of its head. Now, whether its ears were exactly like a human, I don't know. It would have had to turn its head for me to see. And there was hair kind of like hanging over it, but it clearly had there was an extension out where ears should be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrifying. I've heard reports where these things do have ears. Typically, you don't hear that, but biologically, with these creatures, there are different types and different kinds, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. And I don't think
Yeah, they would
there's one kind of Bigfoot like the Patterson Gimlin footage. Like a lot of professionals try to compare it to that same creature, and I think they're all different.
right, right. I mean, if like I said earlier, if they have gone along a similar evolutionary path, and there's certainly variability in between regions, between males and females. They would not all be the same at all. And um, like I said, in this case, the hair wasn't extremely long. It was maybe 2 or 3 inches. And it wasn't shaggy or anything like that. It looked, I'm not going to say well groomed, because I don't think they're out there cutting their hair, grooming themselves necessarily. But it wasn't as long as you hear in some other stories.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And from a biological point of view, what do you think they are?
Oh man. Um, I think, like I said, I think that they look much more similar to humans. And from what I can tell from accounts, their behavior is much more similar to humans. Now, they might not have as sophisticated of a language and be able to collaborate with each other like we do, because I think that that's what kind of puts us above any other creature. But but the way that they look, I would certainly say that they are more likely a hominid than something more related to a chimpanzee or a gorilla. Absolutely, 100%. You know, or a branch in Neanderthal. But if you study Neanderthals, their size was, as far as height and physicality, was much more short and stocky. And for a creature to grow to this size, to evolve to this size, it doesn't. I mean, they would have had to have a huge food source, or as far as I can tell, they would have to have a huge food source to evolve to a size of this magnitude. I mean, it's staggering how much bigger they are than us. It really is. Yeah, I mean, head to head, there is no chance that we have in a physical fight. I mean, it would take 10 people to do anything with this thing.
Yeah, I agree. And from an anthropology point of view, what do you think they are as far as in comparison to us on this planet? Do you think that they just never died out and they continued living and they're able to remain undetected?
Man, yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I've heard of their association with UFOs and orbs and stuff like that. And that's kind of a different conversation. But let's just say that they evolved with us. They are probably more, I mean, maybe between us and Neanderthal. And I also said earlier that their ability to remain elusive I mean, they have abilities as far as maybe being in tune with the woods. I know, I mean, that sounds kind of woo-woo, but um, their ability to remain elusive is almost supernatural, regardless of any other associations with UFOs and stuff. Now, if if they are associated with like if they have been manipulated by some extra intelligence or non-human intelligence, I, I I really don't know what to make of that, man. Like if some other being has came in and used our DNA and manipulated it with some other, you know, creature, and this is what they came up, I don't know. I really I don't know how to go down that road.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, from my background, I have to like look at it through like this creature has evolved, or gone through the process of evolution, just like every other animal on Earth. If in fact you believe, you know, in that macro evolution. I know some people don't, you know, but you know, this experience has made me question everything as far as, you know, the process of evolution and everything, man. It's in the back of my mind. You know, I've taught all this stuff, but then there's this anomaly out here that I can't talk about with my professors or anything else, and it might, you know, throw a wrench in everything that I've been taught, you know. And I don't know what to make of it, because like I said, it's very hard to reproduce data with this phenomenon. I mean, people spend their whole lives, you know, even people that have never had an experience devote their lives to trying to understand these things. And, you know, they may never get anywhere. You know, it just depends. It's really about being in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the right time. You know, I don't know. Right? Maybe it has to do with, if there is some supernatural aspect to it, maybe it has to do with your state of consciousness at the time. You know, a lot of the UFO, I think the UFO phenomenon has a lot to do with consciousness. You know, I think it has much more to do with consciousness than we understand. Like, sure, there may be nuts and bolts crafts or whatever, but there's something more to the situation that we are just not wrapping our heads around, and maybe that extends to the Bigfoot phenomenon as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. The intelligent side of the Bigfoot community would tell you that it's an unknown primate and there's
Yeah,
nothing more to it. And people who talk about UFOs, aliens, and the intervention of hybrids would say that we're infesting the Bigfoot community with lies, but they're not thinking outside of the box. The more
yeah,
intelligent person would think outside the box and say there's something else going on, just because of the secrecy behind all of this, the technology that we have, all the trail cameras out in the woods, all the hunters. Why haven't they put one down? And how are
yeah,
these things
exactly.
able to remain so elusive from people?
Yeah,
But I mean, like Bob Lazar, he opened up and talked about the UFO that he reverse engineered, the Roswell incident. There's
yeah,
definitely something going on, and to think that there's not a connection between Bigfoot and aliens is, it's false. I do believe that there's something going on, some type of intervention that's been happening on this planet for many, many years. And
yep,
there, like I said earlier, there's a reason why this is all kept a secret, why they don't want us to know what Bigfoot truly is. And
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think,
that makes me lean more towards like there's some supernatural paranormal association, because like with the Bob Lazar and UFO thing, I mean, you may doubt Bob Lazar's story, but it's gotten to the point where the UFO phenomenon, it's not a matter of belief. Like, something is happening now. What that is hard to speculate on. But I mean, there is clearly something going on, and the number of people that have also associated this Bigfoot phenomenon with that. I mean, I don't have the answers and I can't connect the dots, but there is more to it it's just some simple primate that has remained undetected. I mean, like so many people have seen these things, and yet we don't have any more information on it. And is that because this information is being, you know, put, brushed under the rug or what? But there's something going on, absolutely. And I think that might be, for people that have looked into it, at least for me, it's pretty terrifying, to be honest with you, because like once you have an experience like this, it opens your perception to the possibility that there's much more that you don't understand, which is obviously the case. But if there is some type of, non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial intervention, and also like that Bigfoot's, I mean, it really is terrifying. And what's more terrifying is that there's humans that are trying to keep it quiet because they understand like the severity of what's going on, and they know that people would freak out. Maybe not you or me, because we've kind of lived in this world of ideas for a while, but people that are, yeah, at least on the surface, unwilling to accept that things might be outside of their understanding, they're going to freak out if these things come to light. And maybe that's why that they work so hard to keep it quiet. I don't know, man. I wish I had the answers. I really do.
Yeah, there's something way bigger going on, and I think
Yeah.
it's only a matter of time until the truth comes out. They can only suppress this information for so long, but it all has to do with money. Money is the greed of all
Yeah.
evil, or the root of all
Absolutely.
evil, and I think that one of these days the truth is going to come out, and it's going to change our entire way of thinking and how we look at the world.
It is, man. Absolutely. Like I said earlier, we're so much more connected now, and it is only a matter of time. That they're fighting tooth and claw to keep the system that they've been operating under for, you know, at least a century. Um, but it's a lost cause. I mean, it's dying slowly, but eventually the truth is going to come out, and it's going to be, it's going to be wild. I don't know what's going to happen in the aftermath. That scares me as well. But the way that this whole system is operating now, I mean, just for example, like with the UFO phenomenon, if we in fact have reverse engineered or recovered craft that have some kind of propulsion system that is what people call anti-gravity or whatever, well, this technology would completely change the paradigm of the way that our species operates. And if you look at like the world economy, it's like an oil-based economy. If some kind of radical technology came out, it would collapse that whole system, because you no longer need fossil fuel, all of that. And the people that are profiting off that tech, or off the old system, are going to do everything that they can to keep that from happening, because to keep the adoption of a new technology from happening, because it would turn the whole system on its head, you know. And yet, like the larger percentage of humans are suffering because of it, when that some kind of brand new energy source or technology would completely change the whole system and the whole ability to acquire energy and everything, man. It would change everything. And I totally believe that they know much more than that they're letting on, and all that, and somewhere this Bigfoot phenomenon fits into that. Whether, I don't know, but these paranormal phenomenon, like, you best believe that there are people that are aware of this and have been studying these things for a long time, and whether that information comes out public it doesn't matter. Like there are people out there that are understanding these things and know much more than the average person about these things. And the fact that we're not being told that information should put an alarm up, as there is something there that is worth trying to uncover. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think they care about people knowing about Bigfoot. They just don't want us to know what they know. And for any skeptic out there, it would be just like Area 51. You know it's there, but you don't know
Yeah,
what's in there. And they're never going to tell
exactly,
you. They don't
man.
care that you know Area 51 exists, but they're never going to tell you what's inside of there. And I think with Bigfoot, they know a lot of secrets about them. And like right now, they don't care about this podcast. They don't care that we know that they would knock or that people have seen them. They just want to make sure that we don't find out the truth about them and that the government does not acknowledge their existence on this planet.
Yeah, absolutely. They've done such a thorough job, whether you want to use the term propaganda, but they have done such a good job of attaching this stigma to these experiences, whether that's Bigfoot or UFOs, to where we self-police these things, like people have an experience, but the people in their immediate vicinity basically, by their reaction, make the people that experience it shut their mouth, because they're made to feel stupid, or they're made, to feel like, well, this didn't happen, this is some figment of your imagination or whatever, and we police ourselves, and that is a concerted effort over many years to do that. But I do feel like we're waking up, as a species, or as a country, or as a species. We're waking up to that, and we're chipping away at this. It's probably not as fast as any of us would like to have or like to see, but it's going to take time, because these people are relentless, that
Mm-hmm.
are controlling these secrets. And
Absolutely. What kind of world would we live in if we knew about aliens, if they told us the truth about Bigfoot, if they really did have the cure for cancer and released it to the people? Like what world would we be in? Would it be a better place? I think so, but it seems like there's this suppression and control and manipulation that keeps us stuck in place, and it allows them to make billions, if not trillions of dollars consistently.
Absolutely. It would in the long run be a better, a better place. Like, the only salvation we have, dude, is the truth. And whether as hard as that truth is to grasp or understand, that's our only, the way that seeking the truth is the only way. And they're 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 gonna do everything they can to keep that from happening. And they're gonna do that because, when these when this information initially comes out, and when people find out on a grand scale, I mean, I hate to use the term, but there's going to be some type of revolution, whether that's an intellectual revolution, whether that there's going to be some revolution to reset this whole system. And that it terrifies me, but it most certainly terrifies them, because it's going to be very uncomfortable at first, and there's going to be a lot of chaos, but in the long run, that's our only chance. Like, we cannot keep going down the path that we're going down, because there's so many lies that are being fed to us, and they know that we know they're lying to us, and yet they keep doing it, to maintain their, reign at the top of the system, and it's going to, like I said, it's going to be uncomfortable to come to all these truths, but it has to happen. It's the only way that it's going to happen, or
No,
the only salvation that we have.
oh yeah, absolutely. And when people tell the truth, things are so much better in life, and you just kind of have to compare it to like a relationship. Like when people lie to each other, or like in a marriage, it really complicates things, it tears things down, it makes things very uncomfortable. And it's kind of the same situation with the government and the
Absolutely.
people. The more lies they tell, the more complicated and difficult things become for our lives, and it just makes things go backwards. We're walking in circles rather than propelling forward.
Right. 100%. I mean, I'm sure that you've experienced this. I know I have, but like the people in your life, and yourself included, it's so much easier to just have the truth and deal with the truth than being deceived by someone you love or even someone you don't love. Like deception, it anybody, you can handle the truth, as long, the deception is where things collapse. Like if you're being deceived and your trust goes out the window, then you start questioning everything. Like we can handle the truth. It's going to be uncomfortable at first, and it's going to be radical, and it's going to be eye opening, but in the end, our greatest ability as humans is to adapt to our environment. I mean, I truly believe that that's why we are where we are. We can adapt to anything, whether that's good or bad. And we can also adapt to these truths. Some people will have easier time than others, but we have to. I mean, there's no other option at all.
Yeah, I agree. And sadly, I feel things will collapse before the truth comes out, and we will
Yeah,
never know what's truly
I'm
going
with
on
you.
out there.
That scares me as well, man. I do too. I do
Hmm.
too.
Yeah. All right, Colton. I think that pretty well covers your encounter story. Do you have anything else that you would like to talk about? Anything that you'd like to add to the podcast?
No, man, just anybody that has these experiences, don't feel like you're alone. The people in your immediate vicinity might doubt you, and might make you feel like you've created something in your imagination, but there are people out there that understand. And it's important that you share your story, and that we get, you know, every situation or every person contribute to our understanding, or our better understanding of what's going on in this phenomenon. So don't feel stupid, and share your experiences, because there are people out there that know the truth, or know that these things are real, and you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had encounters in the Midwest, in Missouri, and I've seen these things. I know for a fact they exist. They're out there. Colton has seen them in Tennessee. And like I said, right now I'm in South Carolina doing this podcast, and I've found a ton of evidence in the amount of time that I've been here, which hasn't been very long. I've found all kinds of X structures, arches, and have experienced strange things. So if there's anyone out there listening that's had an encounter anywhere in the United States, please speak up and tell your encounter, because it helps people like myself, Colton, to understand what we seen, what we encountered, and it's something that we think about all the time. And we know
Absolutely.
we're not crazy. People go through things, and this is something that will change your entire life. So if you're listening and you've seen one of these creatures, please contact me, because we go through so much. I mean, you can call it trauma every day thinking about this thing. It's an enigma that never leaves your mind, and it infests your thoughts constantly. So it'd be nice to have other people speak up, especially if you've seen one in Chattanooga, anywhere in Tennessee, or if you know the area Colton's talking about. If you've seen one of these things, let me know. But yeah,
I
Colton,
couldn't have said it better, man.
yeah, thank you. I believe you 110%. I can tell that you're very genuine. You're an intelligent person. You're a good person. And it was a pleasure speaking with you today and having you on the channel. And that really means so much to me.
Man, I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me on your show, for sure. If you're ever in the area, we can link up and try to figure this thing out at least piece by piece. But yeah, Miguel, thank you for having me on, man.
Yeah, thank you for being a guest, and you did an excellent job. And I'm so blessed that you openly talked about your encounter with me.
Thanks, man. Have a good day. I wish you the best in your research.
Yeah, you too. I hope the best for
man.
you. And if you encounter anything else in the future, feel free to reach out. If you want to go to that spot one day and go on film, make a video, maybe do some research, contact me and I'll show up.
Let's do it, man.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, you have a blessed Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk again soon, my friend.
Okay, you too, bro. Thanks, Miguel.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Colton, you did an excellent job at describing your encounter, and I can only imagine what you have went through, and I am sure it terrified you seeing something like that. I know what it's like to encounter a Bigfoot because I have seen them a handful of times, and it's hard to talk to people about it without getting laughed at. The best thing to do is to target people that you know who will understand and find like-minded people to hang out with or even do research with out in the woods. I really do plan on getting with Colton here in the near future, and it's like 4 hours away from where I go to in South Carolina, so I'm going to make preparations to meet up with Colton and make this happen. As much as it would help out the channel, I think it would be beneficial for myself to meet up with Colton just because I need to hang out with someone who has seen one of these things, and I think it would be good for my mind to hang out with someone like that. If you guys enjoyed Colton's interview, please like and subscribe to the channel, and if you have seen a cryptid creature and would like to share your encounter here on the channel with me, please reach out sometime. The only way we are going to defeat the powers that be and get rid of evil in the world is to rise up and tell the truth. There are more of us than there are of them, and they are afraid of us. They are afraid that we will band together and not take this anymore. So even if you have never seen one and believe in the cryptid, UFO, and paranormal subject, stand up for what you believe in and help out your fellow man. Thank you everyone for tuning in today, and until the next Bigfoot interview, take care and God bless.